They built a company off my sweat, off my sleepless nights, and off my dreams. And then one morning, they kicked me out. No warning. No thank you. Just a cold boardroom, fake smiles, and a letter that ended everything I created. I walked out of those glass doors with nothing, but a promise that one day they'd remember who really built it all. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how I turned their greed into my greatest lesson, how I lost everything, and then took back what was truly mine. Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rebuilding yourself so high they can't reach you anymore. They say every empire begins with a dream, but what they never tell you is how lonely that dream can feel. When I started, I had nothing, and no investors, no fancy degrees, not even a decent computer. Just an old laptop, a cracked phone, and a head full of ideas that no one believed in. My workspace? A cramped garage behind my parents' house. Half storage room, half office. The air always smelled like dust and motor oil, and in the corner a single bulb flickered, like it was fighting to stay alive. Maybe that bulb was just like me, refusing to go out no matter how dark it got. Every night, while everyone else slept, I was there, hunched over that old laptop, sketching designs, writing code, watching tutorials, teaching myself things no one would teach me. The sound of the keys clicking became my lullaby. Some nights I'd fall asleep on the keyboard, wake up with lines pressed into my face and go right back to work. Because deep down I wasn't building just a business. I was building a reason to believe I could matter. People laughed when I told them about my idea. Friends said, "Mark, stop wasting your time." My father said, "You're chasing a fantasy." But I couldn't stop, because somewhere inside me, I believed that this small dream could become something real. Then one day everything changed. A small bakery downtown, Rosewood Bakes, reached out. They needed a simple website to take online orders. They didn't have much money, but to me it didn't matter. It was my first client. I remember shaking hands with the owner, Mrs. Miller. She said, "We can't pay you much, but if you do a good job, I'll tell everyone about you." I smiled and said, "Deal." What she didn't know was, I would have done it for free. For 3 nights straight, I worked without sleep. Coding, designing, fixing bugs, redoing everything until it looked perfect. When I finally delivered it, Mrs. Miller called me the next morning. She said, "Mark, it's beautiful. I've already had 3 new customers order online. You did it." I can still remember that moment. I didn't jump or shout. I just sat there in silence, smiling, eyes wet, because for the first time I felt like maybe this dream wasn't foolish after all. That one project changed everything. Within a month, 3 new businesses called. Word of mouth, the oldest marketing trick in the book, became my best friend. I saved every dollar I could, skipping meals sometimes just to buy better software, a second monitor or new tools. And then came Jacob. Jacob was a fresh graduate, full of energy, hungry to learn. He saw something in me that even I didn't see at the time. He said, "Mark, you built this alone. Imagine what we could build together." That's how Varentech Solutions was born. We worked out of that same garage. 2 desks, 1 fan, and a dream too big for the room we sat in. We didn't have investors. We didn't have a plan. But we had something better, fire. We pulled all-nighters, arguing over colors, fixing client bugs at 3 a.m., laughing over cheap takeout. Those were the best days, messy, chaotic, and full of purpose. Soon our small team grew, from 2 people to 5. A designer, a back-end guy, a part-time accountant, and us, the dreamers. Our motto was simple: do it right, even if it takes all night. The garage became too small, too noisy, too full of life, so we made the biggest decision of our journey, renting our first office. It was on the 5th floor of an old building downtown. The walls were cracked, the windows jammed, and the rent barely affordable. But when I held those keys in my hand, I felt like I owned the world. On the first day, we all stood in that empty room. No furniture, no air conditioning, just pure excitement. I looked around at my team and said, "One day people will know our name." They laughed, clapped, and went right back to setting up their desks made of old tables we found on sale. That office became our second home. It saw our struggles, our celebrations, our mistakes, and our miracles. Every success felt earned, every setback a lesson. And slowly Varentech began to grow beyond what we imagined. Small clients turned into medium ones. Local businesses turned into national ones. We were becoming something real, something bigger than ourselves. But even then I never saw it coming, that the same hands I held up in celebration would one day push me out the door I built. Success doesn't arrive all at once. It sneaks in quietly, like sunlight slipping through closed blinds. That's how Varentech rose. Not overnight, not through luck, but through relentless days and sleepless nights. Within 3 years, we had grown from a dusty garage startup into a mid-sized company with clients in 3 different cities. Our website was winning awards, our projects were being featured in magazines, and our inbox was full of inquiries. It felt surreal, like watching your child grow up faster than you can keep up. I went from eating instant noodles in a garage to sitting in boardrooms, pitching to investors, shaking hands with people in suits who used to ignore my emails. Everywhere I went, I heard one thing: "Mark, you built something special." And I believed it, because every inch of that company had a piece of me. My ideas, my mistakes, my sacrifices. Our team expanded fast. 5 employees became 50. We had a marketing department, HR, accounting, client support, all the things I once dreamed of. I was still learning, still adapting. I didn't have a business degree or any fancy management training. I just had common sense, honesty, and the will to work harder than anyone else. People respected that. They called me the heart of the company. But as we grew, I noticed something else taking shape, and something colder. Success changes people. Some become more humble. Others become hungry. The board started forming. Investors, consultants, advisors. People I'd never met before were suddenly making decisions about my company. At first I didn't mind. I thought, this is what growth looks like. We needed structure, professionalism, and experienced minds to take Varentech global. That's when Ryan entered the picture. Ryan was a finance guy, sharp, confident, and charming. He spoke like he knew the answer to everything. He wore the kind of suits that made people listen before he even opened his mouth. He came recommended by one of our biggest investors. They said, "If you want to scale, you need someone like Ryan." I agreed. I was a creator, not a numbers guy. So I brought him in as our chief financial officer. At first, everything seemed fine. Ryan organized our budgets, streamlined operations, and even brought in new clients. He was efficient, professional, and surprisingly likable. But slowly I noticed a shift. Meetings started happening without me. Emails about financial restructuring didn't include my name. I'd walk into a room and conversations would stop mid-sentence. When I confronted Ryan, he smiled and said, "Mark, relax, you're the visionary. Let me handle the boring stuff. We make a great team." It sounded harmless, but something about his tone, that confidence, that subtle control gown, made me uneasy. He began forming closer relationships with the board members. Lunches, dinners, closed-door discussions. I told myself, he's just doing his job. But deep down, I could feel it. I was slowly being pushed out of the picture. Still, I focused on the work. Because that's what builders do. We create even when the ground shakes beneath us. Then came the biggest deal of our career. A government contract worth millions. It was the kind of deal that could change everything. The kind of deal that put Varentech on the map. I led the pitch. I designed the proposal. I handled the client meetings. And when we finally got it, when the contract was signed, everyone celebrated. But something strange happened. When the press release went out, the headline read, "Varentech's financial team secures landmark deal. No mention of me." At first I laughed. It was probably an oversight, right? But it wasn't. It was the first time I realized I was becoming invisible inside the company I built. One afternoon, I overheard 2 junior employees talking near the elevator. They didn't see me there. One said, "I heard Ryan's taking over soon. The investors trust him more." The other replied, "Yeah, Mark's old school. Ryan's the future." Old school. The words cut deeper than I expected. I wasn't angry, not yet. Just disappointed, because I never thought loyalty had an expiry date. I stayed quiet, convincing myself it was just office gossip. But the more I ignored it, the more it grew. Ryan's confidence turned into dominance. He started making executive decisions, cutting budgets, changing departments. And every time I questioned him, he'd say, "The board approved it, Mark. You should have been at the meeting." Meetings I was never invited to. Still, I worked harder. I thought maybe if I proved my worth again, they'd remember who started it all. But that's the thing about success. Once people get a taste of power, they forget who gave them the first bite. Looking back, the signs were all there. The whispers, the missing emails, the sudden silence whenever I entered a room. But I ignored them, because I believed the same thing that built me, faith in people. I didn't know it yet, but the empire I created was about to turn against its own builder. And the hands I once shook in partnership were already planning how to push me out. Success has a strange way of changing people. At first, everyone smiles with you, but the moment your light starts shining too bright, some start wishing it would dim. I didn't see it at first. I was too focused on growth, new clients, new branches, bigger dreams. But behind those closed office doors, behind polite handshakes and fake compliments, something was brewing. One morning, my assistant whispered, "Sir, I think you should know that the partners have been meeting without you." I laughed it off, told her not to worry. We were friends, weren't we? We built this company together from scratch. They wouldn't turn on me. At least that's what I believed. But the signs kept showing up. Suddenly, emails I was supposed to see went missing. Meetings were scheduled when I was out of town. Decisions were made without my approval. When I walked into the boardroom, the air felt heavier, quieter. The same people who once cheered for my ideas now exchanged looks when I spoke. Then came the advice, subtle, manipulative. "Maybe you should take some time off. You've been working too hard. Let us handle the next phase. You deserve a break." It sounded caring, but I could hear what they weren't saying. "We want you out of the way." I remember one evening, staying late after everyone had left. I walked past the conference room and saw their laptops still open. Curiosity got the best of me. I glanced at the screen, and there it was. A proposal with my name missing. My title replaced. They were already planning the company's new structure. A structure without me. My hands froze on the mouse. My heart sank. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my car outside the office I built, staring at those lights. Every window told a story of my hard work, and now they were shutting me out of it. I started replaying everything. The late nights, the trust, the laughter we shared when the company had nothing. And I realized the real danger doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the ones you'd never suspect, the ones who know exactly where your guard is down. Still, I wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. Part of me hoped it was all a misunderstanding. That loyalty still meant something, but deep down I knew the storm was coming. And when it hit, it would take everything I had built and everyone I thought I knew. It happened on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning that feels too ordinary to carry a storm. I walked into the office like I always did, coffee in hand, a list of meetings in my head, and a smile that had no idea it was about to die. Everyone looked different that day. Not openly hostile, just distant, avoiding eye contact, like they knew something I didn't. Then my phone buzzed. A short message from the board secretary. "Please attend an urgent meeting at 10 a.m. Full attendance required." No context, no agenda. Just those words. I entered the boardroom, the same one where we had celebrated our first client, our first million, our first award. But this time the air was cold. My seat was at the end of the table, not the head where I usually sat. They were already waiting for me. My co-founders, the people I called brothers. None of them could meet my eyes, except one, Daniel. He leaned back, confident, his smirk already giving away what was coming. "Let's get straight to it," he said. "The board has decided to restructure leadership. We believe the company needs a new direction, fresh energy." I frowned. New direction? Since when? And without me? Silence. Then the HR head slid an envelope toward me. Inside, a termination letter, effective immediately. I looked up, waiting for someone to say it was a mistake. But no one spoke. "After everything I've done for this company," I asked. My voice cracked, not from weakness but disbelief. "Do you even remember who brought you all together? Who built this place from zero?" Daniel finally looked at me. Cold. "You did your part," he said. "But it's time for someone else to take it from here." I wanted to shout, to remind them of the nights I worked while they slept, the times I used my savings to pay their salaries. But what's the point of fighting people who've already decided you don't belong? I stood up slowly. No anger, just silence, because sometimes silence is louder than rage. As I walked out, I glanced at the logo on the wall, the company name I had chosen, the name that once made me proud. It felt different now. Hollow, like it no longer belonged to me. I passed the desks, the same ones where my journey began. Some employees tried to avoid looking at me, others whispered, and a few couldn't hide their tears. At the elevator, I looked back one last time, and I whispered to myself, "You can take my name off the door, but you can't erase the man who built it." That night, I sat alone in my apartment. No title, no team, no future, just memories and betrayal. But between the heartbreak and silence, something else began to form. Not revenge, not yet. Something deeper. A fire, quiet, patient, and unbreakable, because they thought they had ended my story. But what they didn't realize was that they had just written the perfect beginning of my comeback. The first few days felt unreal, like I was watching someone else's life fall apart on a screen. The phone that never stopped ringing went silent. The inbox, once filled with meetings and plans, now empty. The people who used to greet me with respect stopped replying altogether. I remember sitting in my apartment, surrounded by old company files, staring at the framed photo of our first team. Everyone smiling, everyone happy. A memory that now felt like a lie. It's funny. Success gives you noise. Betrayal gives you silence. And in that silence, you hear the truth. I kept asking myself why. Why would they do this? Was I too controlling, too focused? Did I miss the signs? But no answer brought peace. Only one thought kept echoing. I trusted the wrong people. Days turned into weeks. I'd wake up without purpose, without a title, without direction. Every time I passed by our office building, I'd see the lights on, the logo shining. And I'd wonder, are they still using my strategies, still signing deals based on my vision? The thought cut deeper than anything. But rock bottom has a strange power. When you have nothing left to lose, you start seeing things clearly. One night I went through an old notebook, my very first business journal. It had sketches, ideas, notes, things I'd written long before the company existed. And there, on the first page, I found a line I'd written to myself years ago. "If they ever turn on you, don't fight them, outgrow them." Those words hit me like lightning. That's when I realized my revenge didn't have to be loud. It had to be smart. I didn't need to destroy them. I needed to rebuild me. Better, wiser, stronger. The next morning I woke up early, for the first time in weeks, and opened my laptop. No company name, no investors, just me. I began writing down everything I had learned. Mistakes, lessons, strategies. I listed every client I had brought in, every contact I had made, every person who had trusted me, not the company. And slowly an idea formed. A new business. One that would reflect everything I stood for. Transparency, loyalty, and growth. But this time I wouldn't announce it. I'd build it quietly, except now I knew exactly how betrayal worked, and how to make sure it never touched me again. So while they celebrated their new leadership, I started planting the seeds of my comeback, in silence and in strategy, because real revenge isn't about shouting your back. It's about letting your success do the talking, and I was just getting started. Revenge doesn't come in a single moment. It doesn't explode in anger or dramatic confrontations. It's quiet, patient, calculated. I spent weeks planning. Not on confrontation, not on lawsuits, not on proving them wrong directly. I planned to take back what was mine in the smartest way possible. My clients, my reputation, and my dignity. I started by revisiting every old client. The people I had personally met, stayed late for, answered calls from midnight to dawn. I didn't pitch them my new company immediately. I started by asking questions, listening. How's everything going? Are you satisfied with your current team? And slowly the cracks began to appear. Clients were frustrated. Deadlines missed. Promises broken. The people who once trusted me were being let down by the very company they thought had grown stronger. I didn't push. I just listened, offered advice, shared insights. It was subtle, almost invisible. Then came the creation of my new company, Novacore Digital. No investors, no flashy launch. Just a small team of dedicated people who believed in the work ethic and honesty I had always lived by. I mapped out every detail. Which clients to approach first. Which services to offer better than anyone else. How to maintain quality and loyalty over speed and profit. Every email, every call, every proposal was intentional. I didn't just want their business. I wanted their trust back. Slowly it worked. The first client returned after months of silence. Then another, and another. Each win was small, almost quiet, but they mattered. And every time a client left Varentech for Novacor, the pattern became clear. They didn't just miss the work. They missed me. But I didn't stop there. I used what I had learned from betrayal to safeguard myself this time. No one could take my control again. I would never depend on a single partner or board. Loyalty would be my core value, not just a word. I also started tracking their mistakes from afar. The missed deadlines, the mismanaged teams, the overpromising. I didn't gloat. I didn't even announce it. I simply let my strategy unfold. The beauty of this plan was its simplicity. Do better, be better. Deliver results that speak louder than words. And it worked faster than I imagined. Within months, Novacor was handling projects bigger than anything I had done at Varentech. Clients returned, not because they were desperate, but because they trusted me. Because I had never betrayed them, never compromised. Ryan and the board had built a company without a soul. They had profit, structure, and titles. But they lacked loyalty. The one thing I could never lose. Every call I received from a returning client, every email thanking me for personal attention, every referral, it was a small victory. And each one reminded me of a truth I had learned the hard way. Revenge isn't taking something from them, it's building something they can't touch. And as I mapped the next steps of expansion, I realized the storm I had feared after being betrayed wasn't a threat. It was an opportunity. A chance to prove that the person who built the company wasn't the one they pushed out. The person who built it could also outlast, outsmart, and outgrow them. Because in the end, the most powerful revenge is success with integrity. The first few months after launching Novacor Digital were quiet. No flashy announcements, no press coverage. Just work. Pure, relentless, purposeful work. Every client we signed, every project we delivered reminded me why I started in the first place. It wasn't about titles. It wasn't about profits. It was about trust, integrity, and results. The old Varentech clients came first, the ones who knew me personally. Some were hesitant at first. They had invested time and energy into the other company. But when they saw the difference, the attention to detail, the dedication, the personal touch, they didn't hesitate for long. Word spread quietly, like fire through dry grass. Soon even people who had never met me heard about the guy who built Varentech and walked away stronger. Meanwhile, Ryan and the board were still focused on appearances. Titles, presentations, quarterly numbers. But the foundation they had built without loyalty was cracking. Projects began slipping through the cracks. Deadlines missed, promises broken. Clients grew frustrated, and slowly they started remembering me. I received an email one Friday afternoon from a former client. "Mark, I don't know how they let this happen, but we want to work with you again." I smiled. Not with anger, not with gloating, just a quiet, calm satisfaction. Each project we took on was executed with perfection. Every client call, every report, every proposal, done with precision, care, and honesty. And with every success, Novacor grew. New clients, bigger contracts, more opportunities. All of it done without shortcuts, without deceit. Unlike the company that had betrayed me, I started expanding the team carefully. Not just anyone could join. They had to believe in the vision, in honesty, in loyalty. This was my second chance to create a company that reflected me, not politics or greed. The most satisfying part? Watching Varentech struggle quietly in the background. The clients they had taken for granted were now my biggest supporters, and the ones who stayed. They were constantly frustrated, constantly mismanaged. I never needed to advertise. Word of mouth, referrals, reputation, that was my weapon. And slowly, the company that had once kicked me out was losing relevance. Their fresh leadership couldn't compete with experience, integrity, and loyalty combined. One evening, I walked past the old office building, the place where betrayal had happened. The lights flickered, the logo still shone, but I didn't feel anger. I felt peace, because success isn't about revenge. It's about rising, about proving quietly and decisively that no one can erase what you've built if your foundation is strong. I remember a conversation with my team that night. "Mark, you've built something incredible." I looked at them and said, "No, we built something incredible and we did it the right way." The journey from betrayal to rebuilding taught me a lesson no business book ever could. Power, titles, and offices mean nothing if you forget loyalty. And betrayal. Betrayal is a teacher disguised as pain. By the end of the year, Novacore Digital had doubled in size. We were handling more projects than Varentech. Clients who once ignored me were now seeking me out. And the man who once fired me, who laughed at my ideas, he would never see me as a threat again, because the greatest power isn't in taking revenge. It's in becoming unstoppable. It's in rebuilding stronger than before. And it's in letting your work speak for itself. Every night when I close my laptop, I remember that first garage, that flickering bulb, the instant noodles, the long nights. And I smile. Because nothing, not betrayal, not arrogance, not lost opportunities, can destroy what's built with heart, strategy, and persistence.